Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. So, you think you've got a handle on your relationship, right? You've both got good careers, a solid financial plan, and a joint savings account that's been growing steadily over the years. Today in the rLounge, the more you dig, the more you realize it isn't just a one-time mistake. Husband stole my savings and gave them to his ex to bail her out, so I took back every penny and divorced him. I've been married for 4 years, and I thought we had a solid relationship. We met during college, both working hard to build our careers. I'm a marketing manager, and my husband works in tech sales. We'd always prided ourselves in being financially responsible, maintaining a joint savings account that we carefully built up over the years. Everything changed when I discovered a massive withdrawal from our joint savings account, $45,000, gone, just like that. When I first saw the transaction, I thought there must have been some mistake. But no, it was exactly what it looked like. My husband had transferred the entire amount to his ex-girlfriend's account. I confronted him immediately. His explanation was a mess of half-truth and emotional manipulation. Apparently his ex was facing some kind of financial crisis. She was on the verge of bankruptcy, struggling to keep her business afloat, and he felt obligated to help her. When I pressed for details, he became defensive, talking about how they'd been friends for years and how he couldn't just let her suffer. Let me give you some background. My husband and his ex had a complicated history. They dated for several years before we met, and apparently they stayed close friends throughout our marriage. I'd always been uncomfortable with their relationship, but he consistently assured me there was nothing between them. Now I wasn't so sure. The more I dug, the more suspicious things became. I started reviewing our bank statements carefully, going through our financial records with a fine-toothed comb. It wasn't just the $45,000 transfer. There were smaller transactions I'd missed before, money transfers, random expenses that didn't make sense. When I confronted him about the full extent of these transactions, he became even more defensive. I was just helping a friend, he kept saying, but friends don't get $45,000 help from a married person's joint savings account without discussion. I started talking to my closest friends, trying to get some perspective. Most of them were shocked. That's illegal, one friend told me. He can't just take money from a joint account without your consent. Another suggested I speak to a financial advisor or a lawyer. The breaking point came when I realized that this wasn't just a one-time thing. This was a pattern of financial deceit that had been going on for months, maybe even years. Every time I thought I knew the full story, another layer of betrayal would reveal itself. I began documenting everything, every bank statement, every text message, every piece of communication that might be relevant. I knew I'd need this if I was going to protect myself financially. My husband had no idea I was gathering evidence, and I intended to keep it that way. The conversations at home became increasingly tense. He knew I was onto something, and he thought he could smooth things over with his usual charm. He tried to change the subject, buy me gifts, act like nothing was wrong, but I was done being manipulated. What made the situation even more infuriating was his complete lack of remorse. When I'd bring up the money, he'd act like I was overreacting. She really needed the help, he'd say, as if that justified stealing from our joint savings, as if our financial security meant nothing compared to helping his ex-girlfriend. I started to wonder how long this had been going on. How many times had he transferred money without my knowledge? How much of our shared financial future had he been compromising? The more I thought about it, the more violated I felt. My husband had always presented himself as a financially responsible person. We talked about our dreams, buying a house, starting a family, building a stable future together. Now I realized those conversations were built on a foundation of lies. The worst part was the emotional manipulation. When I'd get angry, he'd turn it around and make me feel guilty. I was just trying to help someone, he'd say, with this wounded expression that used to work on me, but not anymore. I started consulting with a divorce attorney. I needed to understand my options to protect myself financially. The lawyer confirmed what I'd suspected. What my husband did was a serious breach of our marital financial agreement. Our relationship was effectively over, though he didn't know it yet. I was done. Done with the lies, done with the manipulation, done with a partner who thought it was okay to steal from our shared future to bail out his ex-girlfriend. I knew what I was going to do. I was going to take back every single penny, and then I was going to divorce him. His justifications don't hold up. If his ex was truly in financial distress, the only right thing to do would have been to discuss it with you first. Instead, he made a unilateral decision to put your financial future at risk, and then tried to manipulate you into feeling guilty for calling him out. At this point, I'd say trust your instincts. You've already recognized that this isn't just a mistake. It's sketchy no matter how you look at it. Update 1. First off, thank you all for the support in my last post. A lot has happened since then, and I wanted to give you an update on the situation with my husband and our finances. After discovering that my husband had transferred $45,000 from our joint savings to his ex-girlfriend, I knew I needed to take serious action. I spent the next few weeks meticulously going through our finances with the precision of a forensic accountant. What I found made my blood run cold. This wasn't just about the $45,000. I discovered a pattern of suspicious transactions going back at least 6 months. Small transfers, unexplained withdrawals, strange purchases, all carefully timed so I wouldn't notice. My ex-husband had been systematically funneling money to his ex for much longer than I initially realized. I contacted our bank and explained the situation. The customer service representative was sympathetic but informed me that since it was a joint account, technically my husband had legal access to the funds. However, she did flag the account for suspicious activity and suggested I consult with an attorney immediately. I took her advice and scheduled a meeting with a divorce lawyer who specialized in financial cases. During our consultation, she laid out my options clearly. "This is financial infidelity," she explained. "The courts take this very seriously, especially when it involves large sums of money transferred without your knowledge or consent." She advised me to start separating our finances immediately and documenting everything. So that's exactly what I did. I opened a new bank account at a different bank, moved my direct deposits there, and began the process of disentangling our financial lives. Meanwhile, my husband remained completely oblivious to what I was doing. He thought I was still processing the initial shock, maybe a bit angry, but that I'd eventually get over it, like I apparently had with other issues in our marriage. He had no idea I was building a case. I decided to consult with a financial advisor who specialized in divorce cases. She helped me track down every penny that had been moved from our accounts and create a comprehensive financial plan. "You need to protect yourself," she told me. "What he's done is a serious breach of trust, but more importantly, it put your financial future at risk." I started gathering evidence: bank statements, text messages, emails, anything that would prove the unauthorized transfers. I also discovered that my husband had been in regular contact with his ex throughout our marriage, with their communication increasing significantly in the months leading up to the large transfer. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that this wasn't just about helping a friend in need. There was more to their relationship than he was admitting. I decided to confront him again, this time armed with all the evidence I'd collected. I laid out the bank statements, the record of transfers, and the timeline I'd pieced together. His face went pale. "It's not what you think," he stammered. "She was going through a really tough time. Her business was failing, and she was about to lose everything. I was just helping her get back on her feet." "With our money," I replied. "Money we saved together for our future. Money you had no right to give away without even discussing it with me." He became defensive, accusing me of overreacting and not understanding the importance of helping someone in need. "What was I supposed to do, just let her suffer?" he asked. "You were supposed to talk to me," I said. "We could have decided together if and how to help her. Instead, you went behind my back and stole from our future." The conversation quickly deteriorated. He accused me of being heartless, of not understanding the concept of helping others. I pointed out that his concern for his ex seemed to far outweigh his concern for our marriage and our financial security. After that confrontation, he started monitoring me more closely, perhaps sensing that I was up to something. I had to be extremely careful about how I proceeded. I continued to build my case quietly, making sure not to leave any evidence of my plans where he could find it. I met with my lawyer again, who advised me that I had a strong case for recovering the funds through divorce proceedings. "The courts generally don't look kindly on spouses who misappropriate joint funds, especially in such large amounts," she explained. Around this time, I made another disturbing discovery. I found out that the business my husband claimed his ex was trying to save didn't actually exist. Through some careful research and a few conversations with mutual acquaintances, I learned that she had been planning to use the money to buy a new house, with enough bedrooms for her, her current boyfriend, and potentially my husband if things didn't work out with his wife. I was stunned. The betrayal went even deeper than I had imagined. This wasn't just about misappropriated funds. This was about my husband potentially planning an exit strategy from our marriage. Armed with this new information, I accelerated my plans. I contacted our bank again and explained the situation in more detail. This time, I was able to speak with a fraud specialist who took my case more seriously. While they still couldn't reverse the transaction without my husband's consent, they did place an additional restriction on the account to prevent further large withdrawals. I started transferring small amounts from our joint savings into my new private account. Nothing too obvious that would raise suspicion, but enough to begin reclaiming what was rightfully half mine. I also redirected my portion of our monthly bill payments into a separate account, effectively cutting off his access to my income. My husband noticed something was off when several automatic payments bounced. He confronted me about it, demanding to know what I'd changed in our financial arrangements without telling him. The irony was completely lost on him. "I'm protecting myself," I told him simply, "just like you protected your ex's interest over ours." He was furious. He accused me of being vindictive and petty, but I stood my ground. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't backing down or letting him manipulate me into feeling guilty for standing up for myself. The situation at home became increasingly tense. We barely were speaking, and when we did, it inevitably turned into an argument. He started sleeping in the guest room, claiming he couldn't stand to be around someone so unreasonable. In reality, I think he was just angry that he could no longer control the narrative or my reactions. During this time, I continued to work with my lawyer to build a solid case for divorce. We documented every suspicious transaction, every conversation, every piece of evidence that showed how my husband had betrayed our financial trust. We also began drafting the divorce papers, preparing for the moment when I would finally be ready to serve him. I also worked closely with my financial advisor to create a post-divorce financial plan. We calculated exactly how much money had been taken from our joint accounts and developed a strategy for recovering as much of it as possible. The turning point came when I received a notification from our credit card company about a suspicious charge. My husband had used our joint credit card to book a weekend getaway. Not for us, but for him and his ex. That was the final straw. I called my lawyer immediately and told her I was ready to move forward with the divorce proceedings. She advised me to secure any remaining assets before serving him with papers, as some spouses tend to hide or liquidate assets when they realize the divorce is imminent. Following her advice, I transferred my half of our remaining joint savings into my separate account. I also collected all important financial documents and stored them securely outside our home, along with personal items of significant value or sentimental importance. The next step was to formally serve him with divorce papers. My lawyer recommended doing this when he was at work to avoid a potentially volatile confrontation at home. The papers included detailed documentation of his financial misconduct and a clear demand for a restitution of the misappropriated funds. I'm currently waiting for him to be served, and I'll update you all on what happens next. This has been the most difficult period of my life, but I'm finding the strength I didn't know I had. I'm taking back control of my finances, my future, and my life. Thank you all for your support and advice. It means more than you know. It's becoming even clearer that this was never just about helping someone in need. It was about betraying you on multiple levels. It's a long road, but with the evidence you're collecting and the support you're getting from your lawyer and financial advisor, you're putting yourself in a solid position, OP. Update 2. Thank you all for the overwhelming support on my previous posts. The amount of encouragement I've received has truly helped me get through this difficult time. I promise to update you all once things progress with my divorce situation, and a lot has happened. My husband was served with divorce papers at his office. According to my lawyer, he was completely blindsided. He apparently stood there in shock, holding the papers while his coworkers awkwardly pretended not to notice. He didn't come home that night. Instead, he called and left a series of increasingly angry voicemails, demanding to know how I could do this to him and insisting that I was blowing everything out of proportion. When he finally did come home the next day, he was a mix of furious and desperate. He tried every tactic in the book: anger, guilt, pleading, promising to change. He swore he would make things right, that he'd pay back every penny. Then he switched to accusing me of overreacting, of not understanding loyalty of friends, and being cold and unforgiving. I remained calm and firm. I simply told him, "You made your choice when you decided our savings was less important than your ex-girlfriend's problems. I'm making mine now." That's when things got interesting. He suddenly shifted tactics completely and admitted that his relationship with his ex was complicated. Apparently they had stayed in touch throughout our marriage, and she had been pressuring him for money for months. He claimed she had threatened to reveal intimate details about their past relationship if he didn't help her. I asked him point blank if they were having an affair. He denied it, but his eyes couldn't beat mine. Whether they were physically involved or not, it was clear there was an emotional attachment that had influenced his decision to steal our money. After that conversation, he moved out temporarily, claiming he needed space to think. I used this opportunity to secure our home further, changing locks and making sure all my important documents and valuables were safely stored elsewhere. Meanwhile, my lawyer was making progress on the financial side of things. She filed motions to freeze any remaining joint assets and to potentially recover the misappropriated funds. She also advised me to gather more evidence about his relationship with his ex, as this could potentially impact the division of assets and our divorce. Through a mutual friend, I learned that my husband had actually been considering leaving me for his ex for some time. The money transfer wasn't just about helping her, it was about setting up their future together. This friend showed me text messages where my husband had discussed his unhappiness in our marriage and his feelings for his ex. The betrayal went even deeper than I had initially thought. Armed with the new information, my lawyer adjusted our strategy. We now had evidence not just of financial misconduct, but of emotional infidelity as well. This strengthened our case significantly. About 3 weeks after being served, my husband finally agreed to meet with me and our respective lawyers to discuss settlement terms. His lawyer initially tried to argue that since the money came from a joint account, he had every right to use it as he saw fit. My lawyer countered with evidence of the pattern of deception and the fact that the majority of the savings had come from my income over the years. The meeting was tense, but in the end, my husband's lawyer advised him that fighting this would likely cost him more in the long run. We reached a preliminary agreement. He would repay the full $45,000 plus an additional amount to cover legal fees and the smaller transfers I had documented. That came to just over $63,000. I thought that would be the end of it, but then came another twist. My husband couldn't actually repay the money immediately. Why? Because most of it was gone. His ex had apparently used the money to pay off some debts and put down a down payment on a new car. When I heard this, I nearly lost it. Our hard-earned savings gone on someone else's luxury purchase. My lawyer quickly filed for a lien against my husband's assets, including his portion of our house equity, his retirement accounts, and even his car. We also subpoenaed his bank accounts to ensure he wasn't hiding any other assets. The court date was set, and we prepared for what would be a contentious hearing. However, 2 days before we were due in court, something unexpected happened. My husband's ex-girlfriend contacted me. She sent me a long email explaining her side of the story. According to her, my husband had promised her the money as part of some ongoing arrangement between them. She claimed that she had no idea he was taking it from our joint savings or that I was unaware of the transfer. She even attached some screenshots of their conversations where he had assured her that the money was his to give. These messages were exactly what I needed. They showed clear intent to deceive on my husband's part and confirmed that this wasn't a one-time thing to help a friend in need. This was an ongoing financial relationship that he had hidden from me throughout our marriage. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, who was thrilled. "This is exactly what we needed," she told me. "With this evidence, the judge will almost certainly rule in your favor regarding the financial settlement." When we finally went to court, my husband looked defeated. His lawyer attempted to argue that the messages were taken out of context, but the judge wasn't buying it. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge ruled in my favor on almost every count. The judgment ordered my husband to repay the full amount plus interest and legal fees. Since he didn't have the cash on hand, the court authorized liquidation of his retirement account and placed a lien on his portion of our house equity. The judge also ordered a full financial audit to ensure no other funds had been hidden or transferred. My ex, it feels strange, but good to call him that now, was also ordered to pay alimony for 1 year, as the court recognized that his actions had placed me in financial jeopardy and disrupted my life substantially. The divorce was finalized, and the financial recovery process began. As of now, I've recovered about $58,000 of the $63,000 owed to me. The remaining amount will come from the sale of our house, which is currently on the market. My lawyer assures me that I'll recover everything I'm entitled to, plus the additional punitive amount the judge awarded. Throughout this process, I've learned so much about standing up for myself and recognizing my own worth. I've rebuilt my savings, starting from scratch, but knowing that every dollar is truly mine. I've reconnected with friends I had drifted away from during my marriage, and even started dating again, very casually, nothing serious. As for my ex-husband, I heard through mutual friends that his relationship with his ex-girlfriend fell apart shortly after the court judgment. Apparently, once the money was gone and he had nothing left to offer, she moved on. He's now struggling financially and has had to move in with his brother. To everyone who supported me through this journey, thank you. Your advice and encouragement helped me stay strong when I wanted to give in. For anyone else going through something similar, know that you can get through it. I'm finally free and financially secure again. Final update. It's been almost a year since my divorce was finalized, and I wanted to share a quick update. The house finally sold, and I received the remaining money owed to me from my ex-husband. I've completely rebuilt my financial life from the ground up. I moved into a smaller but much cozier apartment that's truly mine, opened new investment accounts, and have been steadily rebuilding my savings. It feels incredible to know that every penny I save now is secure. As for my ex, I've heard through mutual friends that he and his ex-girlfriend got back together briefly after our divorce, but split up again when the money ran out. Apparently, she expected him to continue supporting her financially, and when he couldn't, the relationship fell apart. He's still struggling financially and recently had to take a second job to make ends meet. The most surprising development came last month when my ex actually contacted me. He sent a long text apologizing for what he'd done. He admitted that he'd been manipulated by his ex, but also took responsibility for his own poor choices. He acknowledged the pain he caused and the trust he broke. I appreciated the apology but didn't respond. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. I've moved on with my life and have no interest in revisiting that chapter. On a more positive note, I've been focusing on personal growth. I've taken up hiking, joined a book club, and even started taking classes toward an advanced certification in my field. I'm also dating someone new, someone who respects boundaries and values transparency. It's still early days, but it feels healthy and honest in a way my marriage never did. To everyone facing similar situations, document everything, protect yourself financially, And remember that you deserve better than betrayal. Financial infidelity is still infidelity, and you have every right to stand up for yourself. Thank you all again for your support. I'm finally in a place where I can say I'm genuinely happy and looking forward to the future. It's awesome that you've rebuilt your finances and are now focusing on personal growth. Hiking, joining a book club, and even taking classes? That's fantastic. And dating someone who values honesty and respect? You definitely deserve that kind of energy. Your story is such a great reminder to anyone going through something similar that it's totally possible to rebuild and move forward, even when things feel impossible. Thanks for sharing your story with us, OP. Given everything you've been through, what advice would you give to someone who's struggling to rebuild their life after betrayal? Whether financial, emotional, or both. How did you find the strength to move forward, and what helps you reclaim that power? Thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.